The Wonderkin, or I guess I'm calling him a Wonderkin. The last Wonderkin was Will Hardy, but there's a new one by the name of Devin Young. Devin Booker wants Kevin Young to be the new head coach. And guess what, guys? If you're one of your star players is publicly stating that he wants you to be the coach over Doc Rivers, Mike Budenholzer, and Nick Nurse, pretty good chance that Kevin Young is going to be coach. Similar to how Adrian Griffin might probably become the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks after Giannis Antetokounmpo publicly endorsed him. Now that Devin Booker has publicly endorsed him, you want to keep your stars happy. It's a star-driven league, all right? And the best way to keep your players is by keeping them happy. Now, we're hearing this report from Marc Stein of the Stein Line. Let me read you what he wrote right here. Kevin Young has reportedly received a strong endorsement from Devin Booker to become the next head coach of the Phoenix Suns, according to Marc Stein of the Stein Line Substack. Stein added that Young is a serious candidate to replace Monty Williams. We do know that Charles Lee, Kenny Atkinson, Jordy Fernandez, Kevin Young, Nick Nurse, Doc Rivers, and I believe Mike Budenholzer, and if I didn't mention Kenny Atkinson, let me mention him again, are the guys. Now, I've said this whole time, I'm a big Nick Nurse guy. I became a huge Nick Nurse fan about a year or so ago when I read his autobiography. You guys know me. I'm always reading. I've read Phil Jackson's, George Karl's, Kevin Garnett's, Nick Nurse's, and a few others. And I love autobiographies. I'm always consuming as much basketball content, videos, and everything. And I just think for the culture that they're trying to build, Nick Nurse is good. And I know everyone's going to give him crap about how he played guys 40 minutes. I mean, he had a flawed roster in Toronto after winning a championship. And you know what? That's actually a good thing because the Suns, even if they reload, they're not going to be a super deep team. They don't have the money to be a deep team unless they somehow do amazing scouting, which like every team is scouting the same exact way. You know, they have to luck out and somebody has to get treated like Bruce Brown, which will allow a team to get a player of, you know, I'm not saying like Bruce Brown was like one of the biggest steals last year. So having a guy like Nick Nurse, knowing that your rotation next year is in the regular season, probably going to be 9 guys, maybe 10. And in the playoffs, it's a 7 or 8 rotation at most. Having a guy like Nick Nurse who has been used to that, has won a championship, is who I want. But I have said it, I'm perfectly fine with Kevin Young. I like Kevin Young as a coach. I think he's a great coach. He's got a great mind. He's been around the league for a while. And I really think he could be the next Will Hardy, if we had to say. Will Hardy was a guy who was with the Spurs, then the Celtics, and then he became a dog for the Utah Jazz as their head coach. So for me, Kevin Young, I've liked him. He's a young guy, and I believe he's like 41. He's 41 years old. He went to high school in Georgia. Then he went to college first 2 years, Middle Georgia, and then he went to Clayton State for his last 2 years, which is also in Georgia. So he's a down south boy. Started, as a coach with the Shamrock Rovers in Dublin. Yeah, this man was coaching Irish ball. Then he went to Utah Valley State, then Oxford College. Yes, Oxford College, not the one you're thinking, the one in Emory, Georgia. Then the Utah Flash had him as a coach. That was what the Utah G League team was called before they moved to Delaware and became the Delaware Blue Coats. Then he coached the Iowa Energy, Delaware 87ers. That's a weird way. Then he was an assistant with the Sixers under Brett Brown. And then he's been with the Suns, and he's became associate head coach a few years ago. So he's definitely an interesting candidate, to say the least. Let me hear your thoughts down below.